All right, welcome to a public hearing on amendment to Chapter 78 of the Town Code, developed by the Advisory Commission on Coastal Waters and the Harbor Master. This text, available to you if you don't have a copy, was submitted to the Board of Selectmen, who approved it and in turn submitted it to the RTM for consideration. My name is Frank Kemp, Chair of the Town Gov't Structure and Administration Committee of the RTM. I'm joined by Adele Connor, Chair of the Parks and Recreation Committee of the RTM, and we expect Jim Patrick, Chair of the Public Health and Safety Committee of the RTM. These three committees are charged with the review of the amendments and submitting a finished work product that has been approved by Town Council to the full RTM for their consideration. Now to open the formal part of the meeting. This is an important step in the process of amending our charter and town code. Let me share with you what comes next. Your testimony and the results of a technical review of this material will be discussed by the three committees involved, and a final version will be cleared by Town Council. We expect that review to be completed in late August, so that the finished product can be submitted to the Rules Committee of the RTM on September 8th, so it can be placed on the agenda for consideration by the full RTM at their September 29th meeting. Should anything prevent us from following this schedule, then the matter may be taken up in October. I hope we don't backslide, as this issue has been under development for about 2 years, and we owe it to our town to complete the job. We are, however, not making law for the short term, but we want to do a good job that will last a few years. The last set of changes were applied, I believe, in 2009, and it's lasted a good time. It is, however, time for an update. We would like to hear your views, but not more than 3 minutes at a time. We have a volunteer up front who will hold up a yellow card at 2.5 minutes and a red card at 3. When you see the red card, please wrap it up. If you believe you have more to say, then you're welcome to say it after the other speakers are finished. Most important, though, is the opportunity to send your comments, perhaps the ones you deliver this evening, or additional views, to us by email. And the notice says through Friday, but if it arrives over the weekend, that's okay. Use this address for your emails. Darien, RTM, at darien.ct.gov. I'll repeat that later. We will proceed in the order that lined up. When it's your turn, come right down, join me in the armchair, and give us your views. This is your time to go on record. As I say in P&Z hearings and the Board of Selectmen, these sessions are not for the dialogue. They're for having you put your views on record for the legislator's reference. When possible, please refer to the paragraph number if you can, and use the mic so that Channel 79 can make sense of the closed captioning. There's some water here in case you need it, and we're patient. Don't be shy. Now, I see on the sign-up list that Mr. Hokin is first on the agenda. Come on up.
Thank you. Okay, well, I mean, I have prepared some remarks, if that's okay with you.
Okay, and if you'd like that to put them in through the email, that's even better.
I've also, my name's Richard Hokin. My wife Wendy and I have lived in Darien since 1973, and our kids represent the fourth generation of Wendy's family in Darien. Wendy and I have owned littoral properties with a pertinent state-permitted littoral structures, including moorings, since 1973. There are at least 200 other littoral properties in Darien with the same right of access to navigable water. A littoral property is one that has for a boundary the high tide line. I have several concerns about the proposed ordinance, but probably the most disturbing to me is that they seem purposely to disregard the line between town and state jurisdiction. This seems pretty clear in the ordinance's opening section, which proposes at the town's discretion to have a single person represent both the town and the state with respect to harbor matters. Speaking of one of the hundreds of littoral property owners in town, the ordinances contain no clear recognition of littoral rights bestowed by the state and only oblique references to the littoral structures, including moorings, that facilitate those rights through the state's permitting process. According to DEEP, a duly authorized dock or other littoral structure is private property, and no one can legally interfere with the exercise of the right of access. My experience suggests that the town needs to become better acquainted with this legal concept before asking the RTM to, adopt new ordinances. In a broader sense, my concern about the ordinances are better expressed in a May 20th, 2003 letter to the Darien's Harbor Master from the Director of DEP's Land and Water Resources Division, which I am happy to share with you. Do you want me to read it? It's not very long. Okay. This is to Mr. Kenna, who is here tonight. It's from Brian Thompson, Director of Land and Water Resources Division. Ray, questions concerning Harbor Master's authority over mooring permits in Darien. The purpose of this letter is to respond to your questions from our call with you on March 8th. It is important to note that you should seek legal counsel of your own attorney as Darien's Harbor Master, which likely would be the Darien's town attorneys. Nothing in this letter is to be construed as DEP providing you with legal advice or rendering a formal departmental position on any matter. As we stated in our call, in Connecticut, all powers at the municipal level are granted by the state government. This means that any local regulation of Darien's waters or the activities therein must derive from authority from laws made at the state level, whether statutes or acts passed by the General Assembly or regulations promulgated by one of the state's regulatory agencies, such as DEP or DOT. Looking over Darien's town charter and the town ordinances adopted under that authority, it appears that Darien claims its power to adopt ordinances which regulate moorings and harbors comes from Section 15136A of the Connecticut General Statutes. That provision is part of a chapter of general statutes on boating and grants municipalities the power to regulate, quote, the operation of vessels on any body of water in that municipality's jurisdiction, end of quote. The adoption of such ordinances is subject to DEEP's approval. However, both the general statutes and DEEP make a distinction between boating as an activity, which is regulated by DEEP's boating division, and the management of harbors and the coastline, which is regulated by DEEP's Land and Water Resources Division. While DEEP is authorized by statute to stamp its seal of approval on town ordinances related to the operation of vessels on any body of water, this is distinct from greenlighting a town's ordinances concerning moorings. The general statutes instead provide DEP with the authority to approve a municipality's regulation of moorings through the Harbor Management Program, which was created by the Harbor Management Act, Section 22A-133 and following of the general statutes. Reading through the legislative history of that act, there are instances in which it is indicated that short of a special grant of authority from the General Assembly, municipalities may not have any authority to regulate moorings in their jurisdictions outside of enforcing DEP-approved harbor management plan. Darien looks to have a special grant of authority to regulate moorings in its water. Special Act 53-597. However, this special act is not specific enough in its grant of authority for an obvious determination of whether it gives you many of the powers that you believe you need. Furthermore, it is outside the scope of DEP's authority to enforce the provisions of this special act. You asked some specific questions about what a harbor master can and cannot require of mooring permit applicants and holders. The department is not authorized to approve or disapprove of any of the requirements which Darien's ordinances already contain or those which you envision without the town's adoption of a harbor management plan. It would be inappropriate for DEP's Land and Water Resources Division to rubber stamp these or any related ordinances outside of that program. Were Darien to adopt an approved harbor management plan, it would have DEP's full legal backing. Please reach out with any further questions. Sincerely, Brian P. Thompson.
Well, thank you for reading that into the record. Many of the issues are beyond the scope of this evening's meeting, of course. And if you either give that to me, or send it to the. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then I will be forwarding this to our colleagues on the commission, and ultimately, I'm sure that it will be up at town council to see that we're proceeding in a proper way. Thank you very much. Now, we had an elaborate sign-up program administered by our colleague Sandy Savage at the back door. Mr. Hooker was the only person who signed up. So this meeting, public hearing, may be short. However, we welcome walk-in guests. So Susan, join us. You certainly are welcome to sit right here, have some water, and do what you would like.
So I'm Susan Marks, but I'm reading. Well, okay. My name is Susan Marks. I'm on the RTM, District 5, Parks and Rec. But tonight I am not speaking as Susan Marks. I'm speaking for reading an email I received from Ned Steinkraus, who could not be here tonight. So this is on behalf of Ned. and I think he has sent this to other people, so this is just Ned's words. There are a lot of steps to renew. It's overly complicated. First, you pay the fee, then in a separate email, you need to submit your registration. Now it will be required in a separate email, submit proof that someone is servicing your mooring and that you are meeting certain strength standards. The renewal of your mooring should entail your fee, then ask the question, when was your mooring service last? If the answer is more than 5 years ago, then the harbor master should request that the mooring be serviced at the end of the season. There's no reason for the harbor master to require proof of registration. The police patrol registrations and the wrong color registration stickers lead to prompt police boarding and fines, in my experience. Again, this is Ned's words, not my words. Here are his comments about Ziegler's Cove. Rafting was limited to 3 boats on 1 mooring. Now they plan on changing it to 4. The harbor is a madhouse on big weekends. I counted 76 boats one day last year. 4 small 20-foot boats rafted is not a big deal. 4 45-foot boats is a different story. These big rafts put a lot of stress on the ground tackle if it gets breezy. Why not issue a sticker or a place card to mooring holders with mooring numbers on it? Only mooring owners can raft up. 1 in every raft must have a sticker. I'm not opposed to the inevitable person picking up my mooring ball. I am opposed to my mooring being the base of 3 to 4 big boat rafts. For the record, I've never rafted in Ziegler's. I grew up on Great Island. Every time I go to my mooring on a Saturday or a Sunday, someone is there rafting on it. Now I need to upgrade my ground tackle to support his rafting. The speed limit buoys are unnecessary and an eyesore, in my opinion. If you want to add buoys, have small designated channel markers. Channel markers run along tight to the Great Island rocks, but it's not marked. People anchor right in the middle of it every day in the summer. Then sailboats or bigger boats have problems getting in and out of the harbor. I hope this is helpful. Regards, Ned Steinkraus.
Thank you. Would you like to leave that with us or email it? Put it in the mix. Well, thank you, Susan. Would anyone else like to talk? Going once? Twice? Well, then, I propose that this hearing be closed, and that rather than adjourning, we open it up to the anticipated quick briefing by members of the Advisory Commission as well as the Harbor Master. Stay if you would like. I know that it will resemble last night's Q&A session, but this gives us a chance to ask additional questions and, unlike the public hearing, receive inline answers back and forth, which will be very useful. All right, gentlemen, take it away. It is a brief run-through of your slides in case anybody has a question on the slides, and then open up a general Q&A, and then after that, we're done.
Sure, sure. Which,
We'll do it.
there were more than 2 things. Which 2 things?
Patty, I'm going to give you the mic for a quick summary of what you just asked, because they are recording.
Hi, Patty Baumgardner. I am on the RTM and the Rules Committee and the Parks and Rec Committee. Thank you for all your hard work. I really appreciate it, to everyone in the room and to everybody who was here yesterday as well, seeing your excellent presentation. There was a letter read by Ned Steinkraus, who we respect because he's lived there on the island. But there were 2 or 3 points he made that I'd like your feedback on. So one of them was he was not a big fan of putting up, whatever you call it, the signage, for lack of a better word, for the no-wake zone. Or he was saying to do it smaller to the right. I've just seen way too many boats flying in there. So that's my first question. And then the second one, I guess, I mean, there's a lot of people that come in and do pull up to moorings that may not be theirs, but I think if the owner comes up and he wants to get on it, then they can get on it. So that's it. Thank you.
All right. So, just so you know, I talk to Ned from time to time, as recently as this morning. And we actually discussed some of the issues that came up. The sticker idea, after some conversations with him, I thought was actually a good idea, because I know when I've been in Ziegler's Cove and I've seen some of these raft ups, it's not that easy for me to discern whether that is a permit owner raft up or it is just a group of people who have grabbed that mooring. So I haven't even had a chance to socialize it with the advisory commission, but I personally think it's a good idea. It would make it easy for me because, as I said, I'm in there all the time and I see the raft ups and I don't know who's who. I have not memorized everybody's boat yet. As far as the buoys, we're probably getting a little bit ahead. That's a little bit down the road. But the vision is to have no-wake buoys, just like we see in the entrance to Darien Harbor, the entrance and exit to Fish Island harbors, the entrance to Scotts Cove, to make it to highlight, well, if we had the picture here, here, I'll bring it up quickly. Why isn't it? Okay, let me just from the beginning here. Okay, so one more, is it? Oh, it's one more? Okay, okay. So seeing there, you know, all the other harbors are marked with no-wake buoys. Ziegler's Cove is not. Now, anybody who knows anything about boating, once you approach a mooring area, within 200 feet of a mooring area, it is a no-wake zone. But that's not always apparent to everyone. So we also, since we're creating this no-wake zone, there would be one out in front of Great Island. My concern being there is that beach area. Not knowing exactly how that beach area is going to evolve, there should be one approximately in that area. There's also been discussion because of the broken down sea swimming pool that's out there in front of that beach area, which is hazardous. Speaking with Monica and some of the Great Island folks, they've hinted on, you know, the possibility of either having terrestrial or a water hazard buoy. I've discussed this with the state, the various divisions, and that would involve a site visit after the ordinances are approved. There's a number of steps. We have not gotten to the point where we're addressing the structure of Ziegler's Cove. The first step of addressing that structure would be more robust tackle, because many of the people that are in there don't even have tackle to satisfy the requirements of just a single vessel, their vessel. Many people over the years have upgraded inside of the size of their vessel. They have not upgraded their tackle. A picture I will show everyone later on. If you look in Darien Harbor, you'll see every mooring ball in the wintertime is a winter stick. Ziegler's Cove is nothing like that. That accelerates the corrosion of the tackle. So you have corroding tackle. There's a number of things that are going on, but I've actually reached out to each of the permit holders in Ziegler saying, we need to get more structured, we need to be like Darien Harbor, and we need to have a contract, we need winter stick service. I guess that pretty much covers that as far as the tackle, the buoy, what was the other thing, the stickers? We talked about the registration stickers as far as the process. What Ned did not understand was, it's not only are we checking that the boats are registered. When I first started as harbor master, many of the boats in the harbor had registrations, but they didn't belong to the people that the boats did not belong to the people that the moorings were permitted for. So there were a number of boats. I used this very similar technique at the Darien Boat Club. The collection of registration let us know who was who and who had a boat. In many cases I found in the harbor, people didn't have boats anymore. They were loaning their moorings to other people. In some cases they were even renting. So Ned, now that he understands why the collection of paper takes place, he has a much greater appreciation for why I'm asking for the registration. It was a big O moment for him, and now he totally gets it, and he's on board with it. Sure. Yep. I guess I could address a couple of Mr. Hokin's points. Talking about the letter that I got from the meeting, a meeting that I had with Brian Thompson and a crew of about 8 people on his team. He followed up with that letter after, I think it was a February or March meeting. It was probably about 2.5 months afterwards. And shortly after I got the letter, I brought it to the selectmen's attention, also brought it to the attention of the Coastal Advisory Commission. So that has been in the possession of the town and town council less than a week after I received it. What came from that, when I asked them, because in the letter, they made reference to 53-597, but they didn't provide it. So I asked them to provide 597 to me. I brought that to town council also. Also with the assistance of a gentleman by the name of Jeffrey Stedman, who is basically the author of just about every harbor management plan there is on Connecticut waters, as well as the assistance of a maritime attorney, came to the conclusion that 5397 has not only been used all these years to formulate our ordinances, it could be used to enhance our ordinances. One other thing I wanted to add.
But I would just add broadly that the issue of littoral rights of waterfront property owners is a relatively complicated legal issue, and probably none of us are qualified to really weigh in on it right here. And that I would encourage the RTM, if this is a issue you want to dive into, to speak to some of the legal counsel that we've been getting advice from.
Many of us heard the presentation last night, but for those who didn't, John, would you flash through? And if anyone wants to stop you and get a little more detail, then they'll hold up their hand and we'll go into more detail. But I think what we would like to do is to see what see what's in the slide deck, just to make sure that's covered.
I'll do it as quickly as I can. I know, unfortunately, for a number of people this evening, this may be a repeat performance, but, okay. Okay. So, this is a presentation from last evening. It goes over the history and origins of the ordinances, some of the key challenges that I came across as I started as harbor master. The biggest challenges were the fact that the ordinances do not address the difference between berthing harbors and day harbors. The harbor masters before me had developed a process, even though there was no ordinances to address it. I adopted those policies, but it raised some concerns. There was some ambiguity as far as what was required. And I'll give you one example. Say a person has a mooring in Darien Harbor. They also have a mooring in Ziegler's Cove. Now, you're supposed to be on your mooring by the 15th of June. How can one boat occupy 2 moorings at the same time? It's not something that could be enforced, and harbor masters in the past had not enforced it. Same would be held true if you had a boat on a dock here locally in town, and you also had a mooring in Ziegler's Cove or Scott's Cove. You would not be able to occupy your spot on the dock and also be on the mooring at the same time. So there's a couple of other contradictions like that. I won't get into it. But some of the key things that, as far as that we want to address is the waitlist management. Again, our ordinances do not speak to a waitlist. When these ordinances were created in 1972, I moved to town, my parents moved to town in 1971. I have been on the water every year since then, most of it on my own. And there was no wait list. My father, as a newcomer to town, got a mooring in Darien Harbor immediately. So the wait list has grown over the years. Norotan Yacht Club has a launch service. Darien Boat Club introduced the launch service in the early 20-teens. And the town also provides access to the harbor for these moorings through the kayak rack or canoe bar that they have next to the kayak racks. So add COVID into the mix and the popularity of boating, the wait list grew exponentially. When I first started, the wait list was about 230 to 240 people. I've got it down to 175. And a lot of it was through enforcement of deadlines, but a lot of it was through conversation, trying to find out from people where they really want to be in Darien's waters. I had a tremendous amount of people that were signed up for a list in Norotan Bay, not realizing unless they lived in Norotan Bay, they wouldn't have access to their boat. So there was a number of measures that I took. I increased the number of reminders, and I brought it down to 175. But we still have a problem where we have people who are on the wait list who have been on it for a long, long time and just stay on it. So one of the proposed changes is that the right one? Yeah, one of the proposed changes is you're only allowed one refusal. In comparison, the town in Norwalk, you get no refusals. If you come to the top of the list and you are given an opportunity, you don't take it, you're taken off the list. Transfer of a permit to a spouse should the permit holder pass away. This is proposed, but using my discretion, I didn't feel that it was correct to take a permit away from someone. So since I've started this job in 2022, I have transferred the permit to 3 people in the harbor as a result of the passing of a permit holder. And also a plan for succession of a family member. Boaters become very attached to their place in the harbor, and this is a mechanism for helping pass that on to a family member without superseding the wait list, because that would not be fair to the community. So we have a plan for that. Day harbors and berthing harbors, I'll try to make this as quickly as possible, but in the beginning, all Darien harbors in 1972 were berthing harbors. If you look at the picture over there, you will see sailboats, large sailboats. There was a employee of the Ziegler family that was the caretaker and also the de facto harbor master of Ziegler's Cove, and only certain people were allowed to be in there. They had access because there was a dinghy dock and people were allowed to have their dinghy there. Scott's Cove was primarily littoral property owners, no day harbors in there. So there was a number of challenges there, trying to enforce the ordinances when you have two different sets of harbors that are not documented in the ordinances. I'll just touch on quickly, I talked earlier about tackle, how there needs to be a separate standard for that. It's been written into Darien's ordinances for some time now that rafting is allowed. One of the confusing pieces of information within the ordinances is it states that you can raft, but it doesn't specify which harbors. And I've actually had people ask me, can I have two boats tied together in Darien Harbor? I think we all know what a disaster that would be in a strong southerly. So there's just things that are in the ordinances that address the different time and day for Darien. So this is an effort to make things, to bring things up to date and keep it in step with the way Darien has evolved over the past few years. Some of the advantages of the, I'm sorry, I think I'm back one. Sure.
Just a quick question. So when you're talking about the day harbors, if someone gets a mooring like this year, it's a brand new mooring, what size tackle do they have to put in? Because, or if they're going to replace what they have, because these ordinances are not finalized, and the tackle I don't think is finalized, the size. If you have a new person or a new boat, and they want to put something in right now, they don't know what to put in. So how do you advise new people?
So right now, well, to clarify one thing, tackle standards are not incorporated into the ordinances. It is a standalone document that is approved exclusively by the Board of Selectmen. The harbor master makes recommendations to the Board of Selectmen, but of course that's not done in a vacuum. It's done with the consultation of the different contractors that are in the harbor. I also vet the different contractors to get an understanding of what capabilities they have. We have contractors that come and ask, can they, seek business? And to come to find out, in many cases, I've had a few that can only handle a 1,000-pound mooring. We have vessels in the harbor that require 2,000. So right now, to answer your question, if somebody were to ask me what tackle they needed in a day harbor, the tackle standards would only speak to the tackle standards for a single boat. And if you had a 17-foot whaler, you might only have to put a 250-pound anchor in there. Now, I know from experience there have been boats in Ziegler's Cove that were much larger than that and had tackle that wasn't even 25% of what it should be. And I know the previous harbor master would tell me his stories because I would run into him at the boat club, and they're dragging tackle all over the harbor, or it was breaking. Now, a lot of the breaking I found over the years was not from the stress. It was from the lack of maintenance. Too many people in in Scott's Cove and Ziegler's Cove have a set and forget mentality. They drop it in and they don't do anything with it. And there, as I said, I have a picture that I can show you. In the wintertime, none of those moorings have been winterized. And that greatly attributes to the decay of the tackle. And it breaks sooner. I've already had two this year that, where's my mooring? And I have more problems in Ziegler's and Scott's than I do in Darien and Norotan Bay. So like I said, if we were able to pass these ordinances, we'd be able to set a standard. Now, many people already have heard through the rumor mill that this change is coming and have already put in their order for a larger anchor. A number was floated around in passing, and it's sort of hit the rumor mill, and people have been buying 1,000-pound pyramids. Some people that have been getting the 1,000-pound pyramids basically bring them to spec for just the vessel that they have. 1,000-pound pyramid for a raft up would be more than adequate unless a squall came through, and they were very, very large boats.
So if you,
The other thing I would just add on that point is, in the past, when we've changed mooring specifications, and there's only been one mooring specification historically, but when we've changed it, we've tried to be somewhat flexible with people who have existing tackle and allow them to be grandfathered in until, that component needs to be replaced through wear and tear, and that's when they then need to upgrade it. So we've tried to not put a big burden on people.
because I was thinking, if you have, let's say, a 23-foot motorboat for Ziegler's, are you going to have to put in this huge, big, I mean, I'm trying to look at the boater's expense, and I don't know how, I'm struggling with saying to that 23-foot boater, hey, you know what, I know you only have a 23-foot boat, but you need to put in tackle that will hold, a boat that's 10 times your size.
We haven't had yet the lawsuit of a bunch of rafted boats tearing a mooring loose during a squall and then suing the owner of the mooring, but there's no guarantee that that lawsuit doesn't occur at some point in the future. And so I think that's largely why people who have moorings in the Ziegler Cove area have been on the margin willing to upgrade them. It provides, I think, some protection.
But Flip, help me understand that if, again, the 23-foot boat, you're not giving someone permission to raft on your mooring. They just take that. They just assume that they can do it. So, again, I'm looking out for that owner of that tackle. So if, I hate to say it, but if these 4 boaters don't realize, they have no idea what's underneath them, I don't know how they could hold the mooring holder responsible.
Yes, but that's not the way American litigation works. I'm unfortunate. I totally understand what you're saying.
I mean, I imagine for some people, it may be a contentious point. But there's been a number of people in the harbor who I've run into that have had problems. And the problems that they've had with their tackle is not the people that might be using it, it's them not maintaining it. So that is the biggest problem I see in Ziegler's is, I mean, there are situations where moorings are getting dragged, but usually we find those moorings are substandard for just about every vessel that is in there. Add rafting up. Now, who's to say also, a lot of these people who actually have these, they do a lot of rafting up themselves. I know a lot of the people who get permits for Ziegler's do it with the intention of rafting up. There may be some people that may not. I mean, speaking with Ned, he said he doesn't raft up. Ned has a very large boat. And I've already had discussions with him. His tackle is not the standard for just his vessel, but I'm not going to go make him get another one because it is 80% of what it should be. And as to Flip's point, once it reaches the end of its useful life, then it would be time for an upgrade.
I don't believe it, but just one other thing. But why wouldn't you then say, okay, everyone has to have their inspection every 3 years? If you just said it's not really the
They will
weight.
have to do an inspection every 3 years.
Okay, so why wouldn't we at least give them a chance to make sure they do it every 3 years versus having to upgrade their tackle? That's all.
Well, first of all the ordinances here do it is create the flexibility to be able to have different specifications in different harbors. There's been no decision made as to, I mean, people, there's kind of like this rumor that there's a 1,000-pound requirement. There's no decision that's been made to that effect.
Right.
And I think before we would establish those specifications, we would want to, have a complete and broad-ranging discussion of the whole strategy for moorings in Ziegler's Cove. For instance, and again, this is not something that has been decided, but especially with the acquisition of Great Island, one could conceive of the moorings in Ziegler's Cove as being owned by the town, like they are in many harbors around the Sound and out by the Cape and Islands, and so that they would be available with town-maintained moorings of bigger specifications. So that's just an alternative, and before we do everything in a wholesale fashion, I think we need to have that discussion.
Yeah, I think the more we can squelch or we can deal with the rumors will put people's mind at ease. So what you just said about the town taking over the moorings, that is not a proposal, if I hear you right. That is
No.
not a proposal that's on the table right now. It's way up in the sky of total possibilities that eventually may or may not ever happen.
Right, but as the
Okay.
usage cases for Great Island become better defined, that may or may not make more sense. But there's certainly a model that is out there that one could.
And
talk
Flip, who would vote on something like that? If we were to change the way the moorings, if the town would take that over, where would that come from?
Well, what you're talking about now is a transient mooring, and those are only permitted through the state. You would
Yeah.
have to go to deep to get transient moorings.
So I think that would probably be a collaborative discussion between Parks and Rec and the Coastal Commission, and then ultimately work through the Board of Selectmen. I'm not exactly sure, but I can imagine all of those people wanting to be involved in that.
Other questions? Open floor. Come on down.
I think you just mentioned that a lot has changed with Ziegler's Cove subsequent to the acquisition of Great Island. Now, there's a waiting list for moorings, and why isn't Ziegler's Cove why doesn't that contribute to filling taking care of the waiting list? It's, as you pointed out last night, it used to be predominantly a berthing harbor. And so why shouldn't it be now? It's the only place in town where somebody who isn't a member of the boat club, a member of the Norotan Yacht Club, or a resident or member of Norotan Bay would have access to the water. And
There is no access there right
There's
now.
no access there.
well, it's not available yet, but eventually
It's not clear. That's why I was saying.
Oh,
we need to
okay.
have Great Island take shape a little bit more.
all right, I understand, but it just struck me as something that had, I'm sure, listening to you haven't overlooked, but it seems as if it would, if possible, it would be a very practical solution to the mooring situation.
It would destroy the Ziegler's Cove as a day harbor, which I think a lot of people get
But-
benefit from. So
Yeah, I think
not-
that,
we're
I could,
not
well,
opinion.
yeah, I personally question this day mooring stuff because a lot of moorings, people take their boats out for the day in Norotan Harbor, and a person who wants to come and hang out for the day can't pick up one of those moorings. So why should any transient be able to grab a mooring anywhere in Darien?
Well, We are not proposing to change the way it currently works in these ordinances, so right now, we're just kind of leaving that the same. I think that would be something you would have to have a lot of discussions around, because there's a lot of people who
Right,
enjoy-
I mean, I'm just proposing a solution to the waiting list, and when and if it's possible, and not getting in over our heads with day moorings, which at that point would be probably an obstacle to dealing with the waiting list. That's all. Thanks.
The wait list is comprised of different harbors. So there's a wait list for Darien Harbor, a wait list for Scott's Cove, Ziegler's, Holly Pond, Norotan Bay. They all have separate lists. All those combined together total 175 right now. The majority of the wait list is for Darien Harbor.
But heretofore, there hasn't been that opportunity to have for somebody to have apply for a mooring potentially in Ziegler's Cove. So that's the only reason I'm saying.
Next. Well, seeing none, I'd like to thank our panelists for another good evening of information and clarification. I'd like to thank you all for coming. And so, as they say in the RTM, all in favor of adjourning, please rise.